It's great to be here. So I just want to give you a little bit of background, what happened and that caused this terrible, wonderful sacrilege act of regendering the Torah. What happened was that I was studying Kabbalah for about 10 years. And I reached a point where I just couldn't receive from the teacher, because at some point he said, you have to develop kelim, vessels for the divine. And the only way you can do it is in your image. And this kind of teaching became suddenly very, it's almost like it's personal. And there's no way I can do this with him. I mean, and I was learning online. It's not like he was here in the room or anything, but still there's something in the language. And so I suddenly lost a teacher. Also the books, they're written from a male perspective. Just, it's great that they're written from a male perspective, but some information was missing for me. How do I do this through my body? There's no language. I looked around, there are no books. There are no books that codify women's experience in spiritual, divine terms within our tradition. I don't have a book I can go and say, this is holy. I think the closest that gets to it is actually the book of Ruth and Song of Songs. But, it's not as clear as I needed it. I needed really clear. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to the beginning. I went to Genesis. And in Genesis, in the first chapter, it says that moment where the Elohin creates the Adam in likeness and an image, and he created him male and female. And I was like, what if I turn this around? What if it's Elohim and it's a female force that creates the Chovah, the Eve, the Chava, creates her and she creates her female and male. And it was, for me, this was a completely emotional response. There was, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Suddenly I can feel the text, not like at volume 2, but at volume 10. That's a huge difference. It's like, what else is here? What else can I do here? I'm like, oh my, I'm just going to continue. So I started this 4 years ago, and actually during the lockdown we experienced, I completed the Chumash. And I can tell you the experience, thank you, the experience of going from concept to a peoplehood is really amazing. And all of it is happening in my body. All of it is happening in my body. And I'm like, okay, clearly this is not for me alone. This has to be shared. And actually it's been shared already many times. We've done readings, we've done aliyot, we've don aliyot at Romamu, we've done aliyot with Lapshul, we've done very recently, last week, we did a Shabbat service with all the aliyot on Toratah. Toratah is her Torah. So it's not, and all this dialogue is really opening up what female spirituality right within our tradition, within our stories, right at the core of it. What can that be? How can that unfold? So today I decided to focus on Moshah. I'll explain the method I've used. So I use 2 methods. One is I go by the names. All the names in Hebrew mean something. So for example, Moshe literally means pull out of the water. So the Hebrew form of this verb would be Moshah. Avraham literally means high father, becomes high mother, Emrama. Yitzchak means he will laugh. It's a verb. Titzchak is the female form. So that's the method I used. That's the core of it. So in the study of Kabbalah, I'm taught to look at this not as people, but as powers at play. a quality that is moving, you know, is an interaction. So for example, a name like Chava, which and the, you know, the vowels arrived in the Torah in the Middle Ages or the 10th century. You could also read as Chova, which means she's experiencing now. It's a verb, as a verb. So now the Bnei Adam, sons of Adams, becomes daughters of she who experiences now. That gives us a very kind of feeling of the text. So this is what we're going to get into. The other methods that are used in Kabbalah is reading from left to right, but also reading words sometimes right to left, going the other direction to unfold layers of meaning, or going down to the root of a word and kind of emerging through another branch of meaning and playing with that. So I do a lot of that. I love that. This is like, I'm an artist, I make. So this is like text as clay. All right, so I selected 3 events from Moshah's life: her birth, up and down the mountain with the tablets, and then we'll say goodbye to her on Mount Nevo. I'm also using the names in their Hebrew forms to retain their meaning. So I'm not using the English name. There's no Moses. I mean, there's nothing that will sound like Mosesa. It's not going to go that way. It goes, again, back to the Hebrew. So what's going to happen is I'm going to read the English, and I'll read some selections from the Hebrew so you can hear the sound as we go along. And I'll unfold as much as I can. I mean, these stories are dense, and they're still dense. They're still dense, but they're beautifully dense in a slightly different way. Okay, so I'm going to share screen. Birth of Moshah. Shmot, Exodus chapter 2. And there was a woman of the house of Leviah, and she took for her husband a son of Leviah. And the woman conceived and bore a daughter. And when she saw that the girl was fine, she hid her 3 months. And when they could not could no longer hide her, he made for her a wicker basket and caulked it with clay and tar. And he put the girl inside and laid it among the reeds of the bank of the Tehor. And her brother stood at a distance to see what would befall her. And the son of Parah came down to bathe in the Tehor. While his servants walked along the Tehor, he noticed the basket among the reeds and sent his servants to fetch it. And he opened it and saw the girl, and the girl was crying, and he felt compassion towards her and said, "This one is of the Hebrew girls." Then her brother said to Parah's son, "Shall I go and get you a Hebrew nurse to suckle the girl for you?" And Parah's son said to him, "Go." And the boy went and called the girl's father. And Parah's son said to him, "Take this girl and nurse her for me, and I will give you your wages." And the man took the girl and nursed her. And the girl grew, and he brought her to Parah's son, and she became his daughter. And he called the girl Moshah and said, "Because I drew her out of the water." And in the Hebrew, the last verse, "Vatigdal hayalda v'yevihea leven Parah, v'tehi lo levat, v'yikra shma Moshah, v'yomer ki min hamayim meshitiha." So there are a bunch of really beautiful things here. And the first one is we meet in Toratah the men and the boys who care for their sisters. These men that we know in our lives have a very clear presence in the book now. There are a few other things that are really beautiful here. You might have heard that instead of Nile, I said Teor. The Hebrew name is Yeor. Now, typically when you have a sound that has Ye in it, it either references God or future tense in male form. So the reason I went with Teor is because there's the word all in it. So you could read the name Teor as the future light. And now we have a baby girl that is passed through this river of future light, a potential, Moshah in her potential, passed to be raised as a princess. And the word, even the word tevah, which means the wicker basket here, the basket, if you read it the other way around, you get the daughter, habat. So there's a really beautiful image here that is the raising and the growing of this potential quality. What is the Moshah? It's the quality in us that allows us to lift the lower to the upper, to lift the daily to the divine. This is what Moshah does. She is the one who adjusts. She adjusts the people, she adjusts the Elohin. She's the one who's trying to constantly make sure that that communication is happening, that the messages from Elohin are reaching the people, and the needs of the people are reaching the Elohin. And here we meet her at her, in the potential. And who's taking care of her? It's the men around her who are taking care to make sure that this potential matures. So if you have questions, please send them and we'll refer to them later. We're on the mountain. We're on the mountain. And it's a big leap from the basket to the mountain, but we're going to do this. And Moshah turned and went down from the mountain, holding the 2 tablets of testimony in her hand. Tablets that were written from both sides, from hers and from his. They were written. And the tablets were the work of Elohim, and the writing was the Elohim's writing, liberated on the tablets. As soon as she neared the camp, she saw the heifer and the circling. She became enraged, and she cast the tablets from her hand and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. The next day, Moshah said to the people, "You have been guilty of a great sin. I will now go up to Tevah. Perhaps I may win forgiveness for your sin." Moshah went back to Tevah and said, "Alas, these people is guilty of a great sin in making for themselves goddesses of gold. Now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, erase me from your book, which you have written." But Tevah said to Moshah, "Who has sinned against me, her I will erase from my book." There are beautiful, beautiful things going on here. So first of all, we have these mysterious tablets that the Elohim makes. So the first tablets, Elohim makes them. Elohim writes them. They're completely a Elohim creation. And interestingly, the word stone, Evan, is not mentioned here in this act of Elohim. And they're written front to back. And in Toratah, it's written mizeh umizeh, from this and from this in the male form. And in Toratah, it says from this, from hers and from his, they're written. And the tablets are the writing of the Elohim liberated on the tablets. So it's the word name Charut. And Charut means carving. But again, in the vowels only arrived much later. And there is a midrash that says, don't read Charut, read Cherut, read liberated. So here we have a kind of interesting object that is almost like a hologram. Each side is sort of looking at another. So I wanted to try and see if I can, in a way, visualize this for you. So I'm going to take you into my digital studio, and I'll show you what I've done. So I took the tablets. Now we have them from his and her side. This is in the female form. This is in the male form. I then brought them and translated into the early Hebrew font. So now we're looking at them maybe in the original font, which we can't read right now anymore. But this is the same 10 Commandments in the ancient Hebrew font. And then I brought them into this 3D program that I work in. And so now we're in some kind of desert, right? It could be Sinai, but I mean, I think probably these are not Sinai, like maybe they are. Anyway, we're in Sinai. And I created these shapes because I thought maybe they're not made out of stone. Maybe they're a kind of a prism. Maybe they're, because they're allowing from this side and that side, from front to back. And there's a midrash that says that the tablets, the words were cut through the stone. So I'm like, let's, you know, we in 3D world that we are in right now, we're not obligated to physical properties of the world. We can go a little looser in terms of imagination. So I added this. See, you can see that. This is a material, this is a black marble material. Look what happens. We can start seeing how these forms, these prisms are sort of breaking that reality and reflecting inside each other. And here I added another one. So this is from his side and from her side. And this side is gold. And it's hard to see. And you can see, I mean, again, this kind of prism breaking the surface of this familiar reality into this other idea of those texts. The text of Elohim is looking at each other. Here we have it out of stone. And on the other side, it's from that same glass material. And here you can see it better. And it carving from its own material. I just love looking at that. I love the idea of how these forms can break and help us as a metaphor to think of the act and the creation of God as a prism. And what is the prism? We are the prism for each other. We help each other see what we cannot see in with our own eyes. This is how we do Torah. We do it together. We help each other see. Okay, so I wanted to share this with you. And now we can go back to the text. So Moshah takes these tablets, whatever they're made out of, she throws them on the ground and she stomps them. She breaks them. It's not only that she throws them, she also really breaks them. Why does she break them? Why does she break them? Moshah is the one who is adjusting. She's the one who's sculpting the people and sculpting the God and sculpting the people. And she comes down and she understands that these tablets are just not right. The distance, the mental distance, the psychological distance between what she brought down from Elohim, the act, you know, that making of Elohim, and where the people are is just too big. Those tablets are no good. They're not going to work. So she breaks them. And it's interesting that the word sin in Hebrew is the root for the same missing target. If you want to say missing target, chata, ichteta et hamatara, ichteta et hamatara. It's the same root. So the people are missing the target. They are off. Elohim is off too. There's no communication. So she breaks them, she goes up, and here happens something really interesting. What is the big, Moshah says, erase, if you're not going to forgive them, erase me from your book. Okay, so the book is not the tablets, right? Because the book, again, in this kind of act of doing, of Elohim doing, it seems more abstract. Erase me from your book seems to be much worse than kill me. erase me. And here we are, we're finding ourselves in the book again. So these stories written thousands of years ago, even in the Toratah form, they carry within them that kind of quality of the life that is enabled in the book, that is longer than biological life. We're passing a kind of life through. And yeah, it's very beautiful. Okay, we're going to the next part of this. Shemot chapter 34. And Tehuva said to Moshah, carve for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. And be ready by the morning, and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and present yourself there to me on top of the mountain. And she carved 2 tablets of stone like the first, and Moshe rose up in the morning and went up to Mount Sinai, and Tehuva had commanded her, and in her hand took 2 stone tablets. And Tehuva said to Moshe, write down these words, for these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. And she was there with Tehuva 40 days and 40 nights. She neither ate bread nor drank water. And she wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 things spoken. And so when Moshe came down from Mount Sinai and the 2 tablets of testimony in her hand, when she came down from the mountain, and Moshe was unaware that the skin of her face was radiant while she spoke with her. And Aharona and all the daughters of Israel saw Moshe, and the skin of her face radiated, and they were afraid to approach her. So I want to go back to the first part. Carve for yourself 2 tablets of stone. As an artist, and I'm assuming that some of you are artists here, as artists, or if you're not, you'll relate to it through handwriting. When we make something, we project our physical body and our mental state into the material we're carving. So you can see it with handwriting, for example. Every person has a different kind of handwriting. This is their body projecting through the pencil onto the pen. It's the weight, it's the temperament, it's everything. Everything in us comes through the material. So here, once it becomes clear that the original tablets made by Elohin they're not gonna cut it, they're not gonna be useful here, Tehuva says to Moshe, you make them. You make them in your body. You make them on your level, and you human level, because you're the one who can bring them up, but it has to start from the bottom. They need to be made in human form. And then she says to her, you're gonna bring them up. And I love how she carries them up in one hand. You're gonna bring it up and I'm gonna write on them. But when she gets up, again, it's not Elohin that is writing on it. Elohin tells Moshe to write on them. Again, it's the handwriting, it's the human form that is writing, because that is what can communicate. And when she brings them down, they're not this multi-dimensional object anymore. They're the 10 things that are written. It's a simplified form. So it can meet the people where they are. And remember when she was passed on the Teor, on the light, the future light, Moshe has come to, that quality has come to completion. And now the light is coming out of her skin. But it's not all skin sounds very similar to all light, but it's a different letter. So again, it's the human that is now glowing. The message of Elohim has been embedded in Moshah, expressed through the sculpting, and now expressed also through her skin. Okay. We're gonna get now to the last part here. Okay, we're on Mount Nevo. Nevo, the letters is half of Nevuah. Nevuah means prophecy, but Mount Nevo is only half prophecy. And I think it's very telling here. We're going to hear the names of some of the tribes. Okay, Moshah went up from the steps of Moem to Mount Nevo, to the Pisgah, the top, opposite of Yericha. And Tehuvah showed her the whole land from the Gilad to Dana, and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephrat and Menashe, and the whole land of Tehudah to the last sea, and the Negev and the valley basin of Yericha, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoara. And Tehuvah said to her, "This is the land of which I swore to Emrahama, Titzchak, and Taakov. I will give it to the fruit of your womb. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you shall not cross here." So Moshah, the servant of Tehuvah, died there in the land of Moem by the word of Tehuvah. She buried her in the valley in the land of Moem near Bet Peorah, and no woman knew her burial place to this day. And Moshah was 120 years old when she died. Her eyes were undimmed and her vigor unabated. And the daughters of Tisraelah bewailed Moshah in the steppes of Moem for 30 days. The period of wailing and mourning for Moshah came to an end. Now Tehoshua, daughter of Nunah, was filled with the spirit wisdom because Moshah had laid her hands upon her. And the daughters of Tisraelah heeded her, doing as Tehuvah has commanded Moshah. Never again did there arise in Tisraelah a prophetess like Moshah, whom Tehuvah knew face to face. For the various signs and portents that Tehuvah sent her to display in the land of Mitzrayim against Parah and all her servants and all her country, and for all the great vision and strong hand that Moshah did before all Tisraelah. Okay, I'm a little sad. It's very moving now for me. I think I want to say just every time we have the seed, it turns into the fruit of the womb. I think what I can feel now that I couldn't feel before is the kind of projection. So by the end of Dvarim, the people are starting to do this thing of becoming a land. So now the name of the tribes become the name of parts of land. And I think it's part of this kind of expansion that happens through the story. And I understand that in the name Elohim itself, the name Elohim, why did I go with Elohim with an N at the end? Versus, I mean, there are a few other possibilities. A Kabbalist reading of the first sentence reads the word Elohim as Elohim, these are. What is born at that moment is the quality of expansion. The quality of expansion from similar but different. It's like a quality of branching. So every tree has leaves that are similar but not exactly the same. Our thoughts keep branching and producing more. This kind of quality of expansion and multiplication, that's the power of Elohim. And you see how it goes through the whole 5 books. The Tehuvah, I'm going to talk a little bit about that because it's pretty fundamental here how I got there. So the Yud is future tense for male. Future tense for female is Tehuvah. The reason that I'm saying it is because the word Yehovah also used to be pronounced until about, I think, the Second Temple. And over the many, many years and many, many books and many more writings, that relationship, that distance between the pronunciation, the sound of the name, has grown distance. But we don't have that in Tova. It's very young. That kind of entity doesn't have, there's no rabbinical institution. There's no history of, what should we do with the name and how we should unfold it. So it's very young, and I feel that we should say it. And what I did do is I created another layer here of the divine name that includes both the male and the female. So the Yud is now like a rib inside the Taf. This is really a word that doesn't have a sound to it. Those three letters here, H, Vav, H, Hey, Vav, Hey, are the root for the word being or present moment. So now we have two entry points that are one into the present moment. Okay, I think I'm ready to open it to questions.
Okay, our first question is from Laura Silver.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, I will unmute you so you could ask your question.
Great, thank you.
Oh, good, you unmuted.
Hi. First of all, this is amazing.
Thank you. I agree.
Extraordinary. I'm so excited to hear you do this. I know there was that reading in Edmonton, and I wonder if there's a recording.
Yes, and it's on Facebook. So I document everything and I put it on Facebook. Go to my name on Facebook and you'll see it there. You'll see both one recording of the tefillah. We did 7 aliyot and a maftira, all in the Regendered, all in Toratah. Several rabbis joined us. It was amazing. And then I introduced the camp of Tisraela and the different tribes. So all of it is there. And if you go back in time, you'll find even the first time we did it with Lap Shul, and the second time we did it with Jill Hammer and Kohenet and Romemu. And yeah, it's all documented. And of course, also on my website, I'll show it to you in a second.
Okay, and one follow-up. What can you share with us, like one translation you considered but didn't use?
In English or in Hebrew?
Either, anything that like what you considered but didn't make it into the final.
Well, so this is first draft. So the first part of this, when when Moshah is put in the basket, at first the nurse was a woman, was the mother.
Mm.
And then I shared it with a few people. I had an exhibition at UC and many people came. There were these conversations. And this one young man said to me, it's really pity you're taking from us the kind of rare opportunity to nurse, to take care, to raise it. But it's like, you know what? You're right. And I find this midrash of, in the Talmud, if men need boobs to nurse they just appear. So this kind of plasticine quality of our tradition, this clay quality, I fully embrace this. So that's an example of something that kind of took a few, steps. And it's the same also for Chava and Chova. So at first it was Eve, but then I'm like, but the names, the meaning is lost. And then it was Chava. And then I'm like, hold on one second. If you change the kamatz to a cholam, and from you go to chova, now we're getting this present moment. Now we're getting, she is experiencing right now. So the first thing that is created, the first thing that Elohin is creating is the ability to feel, the ability to sense. And she creates an ability to sense from the breath and from the dust. Then she creates the helpmate through the rib and the flesh. And she doesn't create him, she builds the helpmate from the rib and the flesh. And I think the verbs really are important here. The verbs, the names and the verbs, is what mobilizes everything here. That's how we see that power play happens throughout the narrative. Thank you.
Okay, next question is from Sarah Brommer-Schley. Sarah,
Hi.
I will.
Hi, Yael. This is really, really incredible. Well, my original question, I feel like actually was kind of this last question too. So I have a new question. How much, I guess when you were doing this, how much were you aware of kind of more contemporary understandings of gender and kind of thinking about that into your translation? And like, were you open to that? Were you hesitant about that? And like, yeah, just your relationship with that.
So one of the first questions that comes up is the question of gender fluidity in the text. So definitely, I was definitely aware of it, but Hebrew, I come from the Hebrew because the text attracts me through the Hebrew, and Hebrew is gender specific. There is no grammar yet that is gender neutral. It just, I'm assuming it would be possible to build that, but the language is not there yet. So, and the other thing was, because we don't know, there's not enough language in our tradition to really build and form the experience of women in sacred terms, I felt that it's really important for us collectively to know the other bookend, to know that bookend. All of us, men and women, women and men, we all need to know the language of our female side. We need to be able to pray to her and to pray to him in this same kind of comfort, and go to him when we need the him more, and go to her when we need the her more. But they need to be on an even plane. But within each story, they're serving each other. So that servitude remains, but now the two systems are sort of in place. One of the things that is possible now that we have these two sides of the narrative is we can cross them over. So for example, I had a visit when I did the exhibition at HUC, I had a visit from CBST. And what I presented to them was that now, for example, Abraham and Sarah's opposite, could not conceive, but they had a maid named Hagar. Or Abraham and Sarah could not conceive, but they had a servant named Hagar. Now we can, basically what I'm saying is the two sides can mate, and they create then more possibilities. So that idea of the Torah as a prism is now possible with a full engagement of the female side. That's what's possible now with this.
Okay, the next question is from Natalie Oppenheimer. Natalie, I will unmute you.
Hi, Natalie.
Thank you, Yael. This has been really wonderful. I actually think that you started to touch on this question a little bit in your last answer, but I was wondering if you could speak to any of the challenges that you had thinking specifically about physically transitioning your characters from male to female. And I was thinking specifically about circumcision and all of the sort of issues that can arise in terms of female circumcision and the way we think about it in today's society.
What I love about these stories is they're difficult on one side and they're difficult on the other side too. And when they're difficult, what they do to us is they make us think harder. They make us work. And one of the things that I've been doing is I've been creating what I call visual midrashim. So there's the body of the text itself, as you saw in the source sheet. fully in Hebrew, not complete in English. And then I create these visual midrashim, and I'll show you the one that I did for the circumcision. Okay, and I'll show you what I did there, because that particular story, yes. Not that I solved it, but there's no solution. I don't think it's possible to even solve it, but let me show you how I brought, you see the beginning of the story. This is the big promise. This is the beginning when Emrama is 90 years old. Elohin is telling her, you're going to have all these multitudes and nations and this huge, huge, beautiful promise, and queens will come out of you. And I will give you and your fruit of the womb after you, the land of your sojourning, and all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. And I will be their Elohim. And Elohim said to Emrama, and as for you, you will keep my covenant, you and your fruit of the womb, after all throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which I will keep between me and you and your fruit of the womb after you. And now the catch, and every female among you shall be circumcised. Okay, circumcised is right here. So first I went with, so in the text I went with female circumcision as we know it, historically. Because that's what we know historically. Now, many commandments in the Torah are not practiced anymore, but for whatever reason, circumcision of men is still practiced. I don't know why. Maybe somebody knows why. This one has, been kept, while other things have we moved on. I don't expect us to circumcise our girls, no. But if we think about this language from a spiritual perspective, we can say that the circumcision of the clitoris, which I call the tickler here, coming from the word dagdagan in Hebrew, which also has an interesting history to it, we can say that the circumcision is the giving up on some satisfaction on the corporal level for a reward on the higher level. We can interpret the circumcision in these terms. But then I met a friend who's OBGYN, and she was like, I don't like the circumcision thing of the clitoris at all. So I was like, listen, actually it was at the JCC at some event. It was completely unrelated. Okay, it was JCC, and she said, I don't like it. It's like, listen, you got to give me something to cut. We need to cut something. She says, take the hymen. Nobody needs it anyway. So then I'm like, okay, that's an interesting idea. That's a really interesting idea. So if the hymen as some kind of initiation is not the property of marriage. It's not part of the marital business exchange, but it is something that a young woman is giving Elohim as a kind of entrance into adulthood. That's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. And maybe that's sex education, that's an interesting idea. Except that for a baby, the hymen is really kind of a little nugget. So I don't know if maybe it's something that needs to happen later in life, like 13, when Ishmael and Abraham was circumcised, and maybe Tishmaela is circumcised, and that's what the circumcision is. So yes, it's a big question. And this is sort of what I'm proposing or sort of thinking about in this visual midrash. And we can argue about this for a long time, or discuss it and shape it for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We only have about 5 minutes left, so we can at least have one more question.
Hi. So I was wondering how you dealt with the core differences that I see in men and women and how they are brought up, how they act. And therefore, to me, it doesn't seem like had the story kind of unfolded in a certain way that the women would have chosen a lot of the same directions, a lot of the same routes, whatever. And so I wonder how you struggled with that, that the story didn't change by the essence that women were the actors, different than the men.
Yes, I mean, the story of Beam is one of them that, there are several stories like that. So first of all, I'm thinking of this as Toratah 1.0. We needed to start somewhere. And the only place that I knew to start is the story that I grew up with, that I couldn't shake. I mean, I tried to shake this stuff off me for a really long time. It's stuck. It's stuck because I was taught it at a very young age throughout high school. So it doesn't go anywhere. And also it resonated with me. So I'm stuck with it. So I'm like, okay, let's just first what I can do here, what I can offer here is break the locks, say, okay, I'm gonna do the bad deed. I looked up, I changed it, the sky did not fall. And I'm just gonna do this first flip. And let's see what happens with that. So what I am saying, this is a process of discovery. And this is 4 years old. We're looking at 4 years old in relation to a few thousand years old and millions of people engaging with the problems in the stories. So and the other thing that I've learned is that, we all carry ideas of what women and men can do, but reality is showing us that we, that we can go beyond our expectations. So I'm saying, let me take the story, let the story carry me and us to wherever it takes us. And then we sort of examine that. And not every story is even neat. Even the story of Moshah is, is now that it's a woman, is she doing it differently than a man would do it? Does it need to be different? It's even a category, once that reality is driven from that place. And I say, there are stories that are missing. There are a lot of stories of women's experiences that haven't been written. So we have books to write, and that's the idea, that we need to build this library. And I'm talking about a sacred library. I'm not talking about commentary. It's a different mindset. It's a creative mindset. We are creating the vision of our sacred reality from a women's experiences. We can do whatever we need to do out of it. Because the way I'm looking at it, I'm looking at how these stories shape our reality and understanding of the world now, and what is the legacy that we're giving to our daughters and to our sons. And daughters first, because we never asked that question. And I think that what we have until Toratah, we know that it's not that great. There are a lot of great things in it, but it's not very healthy for women's consciousness. It creates I call it a spiritual gender dysphoria. You go out, you're out in the world, and then you go and you pray to the male structure that tells you where you are. It's not putting us spiritually in the correct place, really, to really operate, helpmate to helpmate. We are helping them to negotiate their relationship with their Elohim. They're helping us to negotiate our relationship in Elohim. We're both then sharing those experiences. And then we get a much fuller, divine picture, human that is, has full female, male, male, female, left, right, right, left, qualities. It's a much more complex visual. And I'm going to end this with two things. One, I wanted to show you this. So this is the face. Oh, I have to share this. Hold on. I have a minute, I think. Okay, yes. All right, here we go. I wanted to share this with you. This is the face of full Torah. We have the female side here. We have the male side here. Half face, pan and pan. Panim is full face. The name that includes both sides is here. And right here, that part is like a windpipe. And the two lines, the ha sound, the exhalation. And it also spells the word present moment. Two lines and a windpipe. So this is the full face. So what I'm really proposing is once we have Toratah, we can have a Torah Shlema, a complete Torah. You can find more here. This is my website. There's more in Toratah. And here you can see even I commissioned Julie Seltzer to do chapter 2. I want to see if I'll feel the same kind of reverence that I feel when I see Torah. And this is the second chapter when the Tehuvah is put to sleep and Elohin takes one of her ribs and she creates the man, her helper. And then the Tehuvah says, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. This shall be called man because he was taken out of a woman. So I think, I think our time is almost up. So I really want to thank you for being here. Thank you. Follow me on Facebook, on Instagram. You know, more things are coming up. There's a lot of beautiful points of view that are entering here. And I would love to be in touch with all of you.